Hey fellas, Dane here. Today I wanted to give a little overview on maybe a more modern spin on the old school Herald of Ice Autobomber. It's something I wanted to take a crack at since it's one of my favorite builds, and even though the current league isn't super forgiving, it's something I felt could work to a certain degree, at least for mapping. And then I wanted to see if I could bring it to red maps, which historically took a lot of currency and wasn't very good. And this era of PoE, I'd say it's largely the same, at least gearing in the way I went about it is pretty different from the old timey playstyle. If I had to give any pros, I would say absolutely shreds trash. It's pretty fast, depending on what build you're coming from and what kind of budget you have. The clearing itself is a bit of a safety mechanism because of the ailments, and you get to show off a ton of MTX, and it looks really cool. Cons are paper thin defenses, single targets, pretty much non existent. There's not a whole bunch of on demand damage in general. There is a handful of map mods I refuse to run, and there is a large initial investment to get running. So, for the uninformed, how does Autobomber work? Well, you first need a Herald of Thunder, and in this build, you need Herald of Ice. And you have to kill a shocked enemy to proc your Herald of Thunder, and you have to kill a frozen enemy to proc your Herald of Ice. So I decided to tackle this with the Surging Thoughts Legion Sword to kill trash, because the Surging Thoughts Legion Sword procs Storm Cascade on a tack. So you can use Shield Charge to proc the Surging Thoughts Sword, and if you have enough damage to shock and kill the trash, you're going to proc your Herald of Thunder. And so I have added cold in the Herald of Thunder, so when it kills things that are frozen, the Herald of Ice procs, and the Herald of Ice has added lightning damage in it, so when it kills things through the explosion, it sets off the Herald of Thunder, and then the cycle, ideally in a perfect world, just repeats infinitely. They keep proccing each other. Crits actually inherently cause status ailments, so aside from a little bit of increased effective ailments for your bigger shocks and maybe longer freezes, it's really the crits are there to help guarantee the status ailments for the Herald cycle. So if I could ramble on about a few things that you have access to now that wasn't necessarily in the past while some of this footage plays, I would say elusive, either from the assassin itself or elusive boots. You have access to Tailwind. You have far more access to mana reservation efficiency, kind of removing the need for the coming calamity armor altogether, depending on how you set it up. You can craft bigger helmets than the Tempest binding. You can get big essence gloves, which you could before, but it's a little bit easier now to get something more usable. There is the Storm Secret, which I'll elaborate on in a second, which is quite large for this build. Bottled Faith, Herald Cluster Jewels, Forbidden Jewels are big, and then you have a little bit more power in the Flask affixes as far as defenses go. You can anoint things now, and you can also use Awakened Gems, which actually help this build out quite a bit. One final thing, and probably the most important point as far as accessibility and offense and defenses go, that this build gained that wasn't in the past, is actually spell suppression. If you design your build from top to bottom with spell suppression in mind, either through nodes and gear, that is a massive, humongous layer of defense that the Autobomber never really had access to, and I think it's probably the sole reason that an Autobomber can even get past, level 95 or something like that these days. It's quite powerful. It saves you from many, many, many things that would just straight up one-shot you. So to explain the importance of the Storm Secret Ring, um, as the item itself reads, Herald of Thunder also creates a storm when you shock an enemy. That means through your Surging Thoughts Legion Sword, the Storm Cascade, in any type of single target situation, you get to create a storm because you don't have to kill anything, you just have to shock it. Hits with anywhere from 30 to 50% increased frequency, which to me is 30 to 50% increased safety on trash and in maps. And of course, it jacks up your single target. quite a bit, but 50% of nothing is still nothing. You also take 250 lightning damage when Herald of Thunder hits an enemy, which can seem pretty brutal if you run 2 rings. I only run 1. I help fight this off by, having capped resistances. If you can get any max res, that's fantastic. I have Life Leech and ES Leech from lightning damage. I think Storm, Drinker, Large Cluster Jewel, and then Doriani's Lesson. There are other ways to mitigate this or take advantage of it through something like Enduring Composure, Small Cluster Jewel to give you endurance charges, and then for that you could even run Immortal Call to further lessen the damage even more and give yourself a little bit more safety in the maps. One final item I would like to cover before I cut to my current character and give like a once over on the nitty gritty is Esh's Mirror, a shield probably as old as time itself and really still can't be topped as far as clearing and offensive power is concerned. Even if you only have a rolling buff of 10 to 20 enemies, it's already matching or topping the offensive power any other rare shield can give you. And then when your Herald chains proc and kill 50 monsters, it's equal to an added lightning damage, level 20 globally for your character. You miss out on spell suppression and maybe a couple other, interesting or quality of life affixes. But the defensive stats on the shield aren't that terrible. It's very cheap, and if you really want those big snappy clears, there's no other real item that is going to get the job done like this one. Alright, so we're going to do a quick once over of the gear, and then this will be done. So we've got Surging Thoughts, Storm Secret, Ash's Mirror. Pretty much all the things I said are pretty required. This as well. So we got the 6-link helmet. You're going to start this with Deft or Faceted Fossils, and the last 2 is up to you, like Dense Pristine or Metallic and something else. You're probably going to want to use Craft of Exile to see what your best odds are. Increased AoE and Hypothermia are kind of bonuses. I would say the minimum you want is Socketed Spells, at least +2, and then Innervate would have been much better, but in this case you get what you get, and I just called it at this. Just having Innervate and +2 crit is really going to be enough to help clear, and you're still going to have pretty good AoE with Dark Messenger, and you could even get Anomalous Herald of Ice, which I did, for a little bit more AoE. I have Frenzy Charge every 11 seconds on here, which I'll get to in a second, and then we have Herald of Thunder, and pretty much all Awakened Gems in here. And then increased critical strikes, increased critical damage. We've got Insanity Gloves here for 16% more attack and cast speed, but you can go Delirium Gloves and maybe chuck the Vol Stormcall in here, which isn't so bad. Vortex, Inspiration, faster attack, shield charge to bring the shield charge cost down, and Vortex helps as far as safety is concerned, and it can clear mobs on its own. We've got a Elemental Weakness Ring. I tried crafting these myself. I ended up buying one with the suffixes that I liked, and then I did Suffixes Can't Be Changed, hit it with the Veiled Chaos, block mana, unveiled the life, and put this global fire and cold damage on it, which I'll get to in a second. Then we have the Vol Stormcall on the boots to help boost up the offense on single target rares. Throw it on a box, throw it on a breach, throw it on an abyss. Just let this thing fly pretty much whenever it's up, and it's really going to help a lot. And then I'm running Defiance Banner, once again, a little bit more EHP, and I could squeeze it in. Hatred and Flame Dash. Playing this game without a blink skill is actually cancer, so Frost Blink or Flame Dash I would highly recommend putting in there. Bottled Faith, about a 20% damage increase, and then Defensive Flasks, reduce effective curses to make sure you are curse capped. A little bit of attack speed, and then I have a little bit more defense in the Pantheon, cannot be frozen, stun and block recovery, and then less effect of shock and maim so you don't get slowed down as much. Now, I'm running Grand Spectrums. I have minimum endurance and 2 LE damage Grand Spectrums. You can swap this for all res. You can swap this for all res to really take some pressure off of your gear. You don't need this elusive wheel. I'm running Inspired Learning because it's best and fun. I have a Replica Conquerors once again to lower the Mana cost on these skills that I use quite a lot. Chaos res here, which is great. A little bit more all res here. 2 spell suppression masteries, which are both very, very good, and I needed the spell suppression to cap. Since I am running Hatred, I have a Hatred crit Watcher's Eye. If you cannot get the Hatred crit Watcher's Eye or cannot afford it, I do not think Hatred is worth it. Simply, like, as a gem, you might be better off using even Grace or Discipline or something else to boost up your defenses. Now, the 11 seconds on the chest actually comes into play here when you take this node, because it's 20% increased frenzy charge duration, which brings it to 12 seconds. That means I don't need any other investment into generating frenzy charges. Just every 11 seconds I will get one. Now that I have so many charges, I took the damage per endurance frenzy or power charge mastery, which ends up being quite a lot because I have 12 charges or something like that. If you can't do the chest and you want to do the frenzy charge tech or whatever you want to call it, just go with the 100% increased charge duration. I have 2 large clusters. You can get away with 1. I just wanted more jewels and more damage. Stormdrinker, definitely required for 0.5 lightning damage leashes ES. Sadist is probably, if you meet all 3 conditions, it is the highest damaging notable I think is available on lightning or cold clusters. And then over here, we've got kind of the same situation. I went with Sadist, Doriani's Lesson for Ellie leached his life. And then if you are unable to get exposure from other sources, you can go for the corrosive elements. Then I would say 2 of these probably required: base crit chance on Heralds, and then Dark Messenger, because more AoE is obviously more fun. Now, the global fire damage craft comes into play here with Explosive Expert, 40 crit multi against Burning, 80 crit chance against Shocked, and 10 global pen. Very big deal here, and every single thing you do applies all these ailments because you crit so much and you hit hard enough, and because of that, you are able to get a huge amount of stats from the Explosive Experts, like another 15 to 25% increased damage just across the board. If you are unable to get Ashes, I'm not sure what your reservation is going to look like, but if you don't have Hatred, you might be able to take the Influence Wheel and just be fine, depending on your situation. So that's a quick once-over. That's the long and skinny of the gear. You know, you need the reservation here. You could get more life if you want. I didn't really care that much. I actually didn't die nearly as much as I thought I would. The guy got to 99. It wasn't too big of a deal. So that's the end of my little Autobomber experiment overview. You know, I'll throw the POB in the description if you're interested, want to take a look, tinker with it yourself, take it apart, whatever. And yeah, if you end up giving it a shot, really hope you enjoy it.